16th January 1900. Sen was born on this day in Gua Bagan House in North Kolkata. Gua Bagan House was actually Sen's maternal uncle's residence. This ancient building is where Sen spent the first 6 months of his life. If these walls could talk, they would have surely boasted of their earliest tryst with a genius. Professor Sukumar Sen's son and grandson walking towards the birthplace of Professor Sen. From Gua Bagan House in Kolkata, Sen was shifted to his ancestral village Gotan near Burdwan.
আমাদের বংশের ঠাকুর রঘুনাথকে সকলেই খুব মানতেন। ঠাকুর যেন আমাদের বংশের বিধাতা। গোতানে আরও এক ঘর সেন পদবীর গ্রাহস্থ ছিলেন। তারা আমাদের বংশেরই এক ভিন্ন শাখা। তাদের বলতুম ও বাড়ির সেন। রঘুনাথকে নিয়ে তাদের সঙ্গে ভাগাভাগি ছিল। বছরের মধ্যে 6 মাস তাদের ভাগে, 6 মাস আমাদের ভাগে। তবে একটানা নয়, 3 মাস 3 মাস করে।
The early years of Sen had him travelling a lot. Sen stayed in Gotan for almost 2.5 years. But since Sen's father was a law practitioner, the family soon moved to Burdwan. Burdwan was to be the city where Sen's distinguished academic career was to be laid. Sen completed his schooling from Municipal Boys High School in Burdwan. The building was not in such a bad state always, nor was the surrounding so non-academic. In fact, it was one of the best schools in Burdwan those days. But now that the area has turned into a commercial one, the school building has been shifted elsewhere. After his matriculation, Sen got admission in Burdwan Raj College, from where he pursued his intermediate in arts. This house was built by Sen in 1940s. He had fondly named it Shubhastu, a Sanskrit word which loosely means blessing. In 1943-44, Sahitya Sabha, a literary academy, was housed here. In this rare photograph, Professor Sen, along with his daughter, granddaughter, and members of Sahitya Sabha. This is a view of the personal library of Sukumar Sen. In the 1940s, Sen began working with manuscripts, a journey that was to continue till he breathed his last in 1992. Sen gave a new life to these manuscripts that would have otherwise merely dusted in the showcases for years to come. Sen amassed around 900 manuscripts that are still preserved in the Burdwan Sahitya Sabha. This collection has also been filmed by the South Asia Microfilm Project of Indiana University in USA. Interestingly, the house that Sen had built in 1940 soon turned into an intellectual den. It was occupied first by Sukumar Sen's mother and then by his wife. Coming back to Sen's academic career, Sen took up Sanskrit honours in Calcutta Sanskrit College. In 1921, Sen got his honours degree in Sanskrit and philology. Next what? Sen was fresh out of college and asking himself the question. Sen liked the idea and studied comparative philology from Calcutta University. Sen had joined the university as a student in 1921 and went on to become the Khaira Professor of Linguistics in 1954. In 1968, he was the head of Department of Linguistics, succeeding his teacher Suniti Kumar Chatterjee.
Sukumar Sen, in his book entitled as Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, Scholar and Virtuoso, writes, scholars of the stature of Suniti Kumar Chatterjee are of two types. One is the type of Valmiki, a Muni, who sits in a place, diffuses knowledge and wisdom. The other are types of Saivana, a Rishi, who moves about and helps himself as well as others.
Sen completed his PhD in 1937 from Calcutta University. His dissertation paper was titled Historical Syntax of Middle and New Indo-Aryan. L.D. Barrett, R.L. Turner and Jules Bloch, renowned linguists of all times, had examined Sen's PhD paper.
Professor Sukumar Sen is in fact one of the most reputed scholars of University of Calcutta, of whom we are really proud of. In fact, he tried to establish a sort of synthesis between the chaste Bengali language and so-called Islamic words, which are known as Muslim Bengali words. And we find also that Professor Sen tried to register all those important changes through his scholastic works.
He was able to keep the Department of Linguistics active at Calcutta University through decades which did not really bode well for scholarly work in humanities in India. Dr. Bhakti Prasad Malik and Dr. Paresh Mazumdar were both students of Professor Sukumar Sen. Sen's university years as a student was marked with awards and recognitions. Examination for the degree of MA in Comparative Philology. Medal awarded to Sukumar Sen, MA, 1923. University of Calcutta, the Advancement of Learning. Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee Gold Medal. Sukumar Sen, MA, University of Calcutta. Sir Jadunath Sarkar Gold Medal. The Asiatic Society Gold Medal awarded to Sukumar Sen in 1969. Prafulla Smriti Anand Puruskar, 1372. Linguistic Society of India, 1928. Golden Jubilee, 1978.
My father, Sukumar Sen, was a scholar of repute. But curiously enough, when I think of Sukumar Sen as my father, I completely divorce him from Sukumar Sen, the scholar. And when I think of Sukumar Sen, the scholar, I do not consider him to be my father. He becomes absolutely something impersonal. As a father, he was a very loving one. But we never felt that he was loving unless, or until rather, when I missed him. The other aspect of his character, which I have tried to emulate and which I am sure I have not succeeded, is to give us liberty to develop in our own ways. He never expected anything from us. He never expected that we will do well in the exam. He never expected that we will get a good job, we will earn lots of money. No, what he expected is this, that we will conform to the basic norms of our family. We had differences of opinion almost in many matters, particularly academic issues, but he never says, no, follow this line. In my younger days, I was much interested in literature. So he allowed me to read literature. Then by a series of accidents, I took interest in linguistics. And then I said I'd read linguistics. He said you can read linguistics. So this way, what I have become is to a large extent by a negative support from my father.
তখন সময়টা ভালোই কেটেছিল। তখন বড় বড় মানুষও এসেছেন, ওই সাহিত্যিক অনেকে এসেছেন, শরদিন্দু বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায়, বনফুল, সমরেশ বোস, প্রেমেন্দ্র মিত্র ইত্যাদি অনেকে, সুনীতি কুমার চট্টোপাধ্যায়, তারা এসেছেন, তাদের দেখেছি। সেই সময় অন্য রকমভাবেই কেটেছে। তারপরে ওনার আরেকটা ছিল, প্রিয় ছিল রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীত। উনি এটা রেডিওয়ে ওনার সকালবেলা রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীত শোনা চাই। আর উনি আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা করেছিলেন, এখানে হোমসিয়ানা ক্লাব বলে একটা ডিটেকটিভ ক্লাব করেছিলেন, তাতে অনেকেই আসতেন, সুমতনাথ ঘোষ, গজেন্দ্রনাথ মিত্র, সমরেশ বসু, তারপরে নীরেন্দ্রনাথ চক্রবর্তী, আরও অনেকে এসেছেন। উনি অত্যন্ত সুস্থভাবে উনি এই জগৎ ছেড়ে চলে গেছেন। সেটা আমার কাছে খুব ভালো লাগে যে একজন মানুষ এত কিছুর মধ্যে থেকেও তিনি সেই সবের মধ্যে থেকে কোনো কাউকে কষ্ট দেননি, হঠাৎই একদম চলে গেলেন এত সুস্থভাবে, এত সুন্দরভাবে সমস্ত ছেড়ে। কিন্তু এখনও তার অভাব তাদের আমি খুব অনুভব করি।
These are some of his personal belongings: ink pot, pen, some interesting scribblings, his handwriting across diaries, letters, a pocket watch, wristwatch, magnifying glass on stand, and a paper cutter, the need of a research scholar.
কোথা যাবে সে কি জানা নেই, যেথা আছে ঘর সেখানেই, মন যে দিল না সাড়া, তাই তুমি গৃহ ছাড়া, পরবাসী বাহিরে অন্তরে।
He was dry as a dust. He had a gramophone in his office. And on the gramophone, he taught phonetics to his students with Daniel Jones' cardinal vowels and all that, how to utter a sound.
মহামহোপাধ্যায়, বিজুশেখর শাস্ত্রী, বিজুশেখর ভট্টাচার্য, the friend of T.P. Mohan Sen. He often referred to Dr. Sukumar Sen. He said, Sukumar Sen is doing this and that. So what I felt that though Sukumar Sen was our teacher in the Department of Bengali, but the Sanskrit scholars, eminent scholars, had a kind of respect for him.
Living through a very vibrant and sometimes dangerous period in Indian history, Sukumar Sen was very much product of his time.
I am very glad to say that the presence of Professor Sukumar Sen in the Asiatic Society as its president was very relevant, because the Asiatic Society has a huge collection of manuscripts, and Professor Sukumar Sen was an avid reader of manuscripts of all sorts, particularly Bengali and Sanskrit. In fact, Dr. Sukumar Sen discovered many aspects of Vaishnavism in Bengal which remained unknown to the former scholars. And his treatment of the subject is always based on evidence, is always lucid, and in some places He has written in a brilliant style of some of the works like the work of Boru Chandidas, Sri Krishna Kirtan, in an exemplary manner. The other historians have not been able to achieve so much as he has achieved. He has ably edited some volumes from the manuscripts. For example, Sheko Shubhodaya, it's a very peculiar book, a mixture of Bengali and Sanskrit. And it was supposed to have been written at the time of King Lakshmana Sen. He edited Vishnu Pala's Manasa Mangala and Vipradasa's Manasa Mangala. These two Manasa Mangalas are of great importance in constructing the social history, social and religious history of Bengal. And he edited these books in a brilliant way. Thirdly, he discovered a manuscript on the biography of Chaitanya, and some of the parts of the manuscripts were not decipherable, but he edited it in such a manner that it is of great use to any student of Vaishnava literature. He tried to show the origin of goddesses of Bengal to the ancient mythologies and Vedic literature. That was a distinct contribution to this sort of study. There was a difference of opinion between Sukumar Sen and Professor Ashutosh Bhattacharya, another great professor of Bengal, about the origin of the folk goddesses of Bengal. But to my mind, the arguments proffered by Dr. Sukumar Sen seem to be more probable than the arguments given by Professor Ashutosh Bhattacharya, mainly because of the fact that the arguments of Professor Sen are based on evidence. So his work in Bombay Sahitya Parishad was as much significant as his work in the Asiatic Society. He knew the technique of singing the old songs of Bengal. He described the technique in his book, the meaning of certain technical terms used by the old singers of Bengal. He explained them in his book. And this explanation is acceptable to the scholars now.
He wrote a book on Bartola literature named Bartola Chhapao Chobi. The original material for this book is preserved in a large measure in Bangya Sahitya Parishad.
উনি আগে বাংলায় লিখতেন না, লিখতেন ইংরেজিতে। প্রথম ওর বাংলা প্রবন্ধ হচ্ছে গোবিন্দ দাস কবিরাজ, বঙ্গীয় সাহিত্য পরিষদ পত্রিকায় প্রকাশিত হয়েছিল। একটা প্রবন্ধ নিয়ে একটা পত্রিকা, যেটা এই বিচিত্র প্রবন্ধের মধ্যে আছে। এই হচ্ছে ওর বাংলায় লেখা প্রথম প্রবন্ধ, দ্য ফার্স্ট বেঙ্গলি রাইটিং অফ সুকুমার সেন।
His first academic appearance as a Bengali scholar took place at the hall of the Bangya Sahitya Parishad. There he presented a paper which is called Bangla Narir Bhasha.
Professor Sukumar Sen was the person who single-handedly kept the Linguistic Society of India alive. Professor Sen's one-volume, relatively short study in English of the history of Bangla literature, which was published, I believe, by Sahitya Akademi with a preface by Jawaharlal Nehru. It's a bit of a model for a history of an Indian literature coming up to the present and meant for an international as well as a national audience.
Rabindranath writes in appreciation of the first volume of Bangla Sahityer Itihas.
প্রশংসা করেছিলেন, সেখানে প্রশংসার মূল কথাটা ছিল যে রাষ্ট্র সমাজের পটভূমিতে রেখে সাহিত্য বিচার এইভাবে সমগ্র বাংলা সাহিত্যের পরিচয় দান এই প্রথম। এবং ধরা যাক যে সেই 20 শতকের 4 দশক থেকে আজ পর্যন্ত
বাংলা সাহিত্যের ইতিহাস ইস্টার্ন পাবলিশার্স থেকে বেরিয়েছিল 4 খণ্ডে। প্রথম খণ্ডটা দুটো ভাগ ছিল, পূর্বার্ধ ও অপরার্ধ। প্রথম খণ্ডটা দুটো ভাগ, তারপর দ্বিতীয় খণ্ড 19বিংশ শতাব্দী, 19th সেঞ্চুরি। তৃতীয় খণ্ড রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর। চতুর্থ খণ্ড রবীন্দ্রোত্তর বাংলা সাহিত্যের ইতিহাস। পরে আনন্দ পাবলিশার্স, যেটা এখন বাজারে পাওয়া যাচ্ছে, এরা 5 খণ্ডে বের করে, 5 ভলিউমস। ফার্স্ট ভলিউম ওই প্রথম খণ্ড পূর্বার্ধ, সেকেন্ড ভলিউম প্রথম খণ্ড অপরার্ধ, থার্ড ভলিউম 19বিংশ শতাব্দী, ফোর্থ ভলিউম রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর, অ্যান্ড ফিফথ ভলিউম রবীন্দ্রোত্তর বাংলা সাহিত্যের ইতিহাস।
He wrote a comparative grammar of Middle Indo-Aryan, and it was originally published from Pune, including the second edition. So, a comparative grammar of Middle Indo-Aryan, a comparative syntax of Middle Indo-Aryan, and a comparative grammar of Maitrayani Samhita are the basic contributions of Professor Sukumar Sen, for which he will live long, or as long as this subject exists. He had one Mysore University extension on Sanskrit philology. The history and prehistory of Sanskrit, published in 1957.
Dr. Sen was able to draw a convincing and complete portrait of Middle Indo-Aryan and to show exactly what processes lay from the old Indo-Aryan to the new Indo-Aryan.
History will judge Sen mainly by the contributions he made as a scholar to the consolidation of Indo-Aryan linguistics in present-day India. And I think the specific contribution for which he will be most remembered is that he was able to bring together the understanding of Old Indo-Aryan, to which his teacher and predecessor Suniti Kumar Chatterjee had made classic contributions. And again, Chatterjee's studies of New Indo-Aryan, which is the technical term linguists use for modern Indo-Aryan languages such as Marathi and Bangla and Assamese and so on. Sen was able to draw a convincing and complete portrait of Middle Indo-Aryan.
সুকুমার সেন একেবারেই মৌলিক। তিনি বলেছেন এটা ভারতীয় সাহিত্যের ইতিহাস। তার মানে তিনি ইন্ডোলজির চর্চাটাকে নতুন মাত্রা দিতে চেয়েছেন তার এই ভারতীয় সাহিত্যের ইতিহাস বইটাতে। কি চমৎকার করে যে লেখা এই বইটা, একেবারে গল্পের মতো, এত কঠিন তথ্য, এত নিগূঢ় তথ্য, এত সহজভাবে সেগুলোকে তিনি তুলে ধরেছেন। একটা দৃষ্টান্ত দিচ্ছি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে কুমার সম্ভব কাব্যকে তিনি বলেছেন যে এটা হচ্ছে একজন গৃহস্থের বাড়ির মেয়ের জন্মানো, তার বড় হয়ে ওঠা, তার লেখাপড়া শেখা, তার খেলাধুলো, তারপর তার বিয়ে হওয়া। এই যে একজন গৃহস্থের বাড়ির একটি মেয়ে যেভাবে স্বাভাবিকভাবে বেড়ে ওঠে, তার জীবনের যে পরিণতি পৌঁছয়, সেই পরিণতিটাই, সেই গল্পটাই হচ্ছে গিয়ে কুমার সম্ভবের গল্প।
Some of his widely read works: Charyagiti Padavali, Vrindavan Das Birachita, Chaitanya Bhagwat, Bhashar Itibrita, Ram Kathar Prakitihas, Nat Natya Natak, Dyutpati Siddharth, Rabindrer Indradhanu, Prachin Kal O Bengali, Diner Pore Dinje Gelo, Itihas Mala, and his etymological dictionary of Bengali towards the end of his long and distinguished career.
আধুনিক কালে ধরতে গেলে সুকুমার সেনের প্রথম বাংলা গদ্য রচনা বই যেটি বেরোয় সেটি হচ্ছে বাংলা সাহিত্যে গদ্য, অর্থাৎ 19 শতকের বাংলা সাহিত্য চর্চা। তিনি শেষ জীবনে কিছু কিছু ধরা যাক যে সাহিত্যেতর বিষয় সেগুলিকেও আলোচনার অঙ্গীভূত করেছেন, যেমন ক্রাইম কাহিনী, অর্থাৎ আমাদের ডিটেকটিভ গল্প, গোয়েন্দা কাহিনী। আমরা বাংলায় যে রহস্য গল্প যেগুলো পড়ি তার মধ্যে ওই দুটো ধারা রয়েছে, একটা হচ্ছে ঘটনাবহুল চমৎকারিত্বপূর্ণ রহস্য উপন্যাস, আর আরেকটা হচ্ছে ওই বুদ্ধিবৃত্তির সাহায্যে জটিল সমস্যাগুলোকে উন্মেষ করা, সত্য সন্ধানে। সেখানে সুকুমার সেন যেন সেই পদ্ধতিটা গ্রহণ করেছেন। এটি সংকলন করা, এ নিয়ে আলোচনা করা, অর্থাৎ বাংলা গল্প সাহিত্যেও সুকুমার সেন মশায়ের একটি বিশেষ দান আছে।
রেলের পাঁচালী, আছে তো হাতখানি, কলিকতার কাহিনী, বাংলা স্থানম, भारत काथार ग्रंथ विमोचन, व्यंग भूमिका, चैतन्य बदान।
তিনি কালিদাসকে নিয়ে মূলত সেই কালিদাসের যুগের পটভূমিতে স্থাপন করে কিছু রহস্য গল্প, গোয়েন্দা গল্প, যদিও কালিদাস গোয়েন্দা ছিলেন না, কিন্তু তিনি বলতেন হুনুরি, আসলে প্রাচীনকালে সেই রহস্যভেদ করা, এই রহস্যভেদ করার যে পদ্ধতি খণ্ডের বিষয় নয়। রবীন্দ্রনাথ নিয়েও তিনি 4-5টি বই লেখেন এবং সেগুলির মধ্য দিয়ে আমাদের যে প্রচলিত সমালোচনা ধারা তা থেকে একটা স্বতন্ত্র ধারার উন্মেষ হয়েছে।
I only wish that in our generation there had been a figure comparable to Professor Sen, providing leadership, if not one figure, perhaps several figures. So there's a very concrete sense in which we miss the type of academic and personal leadership that Professor Sen was able to provide, let us say, in the 1940s and 50s. And this is important not just for linguistics but for the humanities as a whole. I'm not merely missing Professor Sukumar Sen as a linguist, I'm missing him at the level of the study of Bangla language and literature.